The vast hall of the Galactic Council hummed with unease. Delegates from dozens of worlds occupied their hovering seats, each tailored to the unique forms of their species. This emergency session had been summoned with rare haste, and the cause became clear when Ambassador Talon stepped forward. The Vani envoy appeared worn, his tall, slender figure trembling faintly as he reached the chamber's center. His people were famed across the stars for calm composure and healing skill. So seeing one in such visible distress stirred anxious murmurs among those gathered. "Council members," Talon began, his voice carrying clearly through the universal translators, "my people face utter annihilation. The Korak Empire has entered our system with a fleet of 200 warships. They demand unconditional surrender, or the destruction of every world we inhabit." The chamber went still. Everyone knew of the Korak Empire, plunderers and conquerors, sweeping through space like a pestilence. Countless planets had fallen to their vast vessels and merciless legions. Resistance was met with slaughter. Surrender was treated as weakness, punished without pity. Representative Golar of the Helix Confederation rose, his four arms slicing emphatically through the air. "The Korak have never been stopped. Our united fleets tried to defend the Nexus colonies last year. We lost 30 ships and barely escaped." "That is exactly why we must act differently," Talon countered. "If we do nothing, the Vani will join the long list of extinct peoples. Our medical knowledge, our peaceful traditions, gone forever." An elder delegate from the core worlds spoke up. "What can we do that has not already been tried? Their warships are too powerful. Their weapons shred our shields like tissue. Even with every ship from every world here, we would still be outnumbered and outgunned." The debate dragged on for hours. Some pushed for sending a small escort to evacuate civilians. Others argued even that was suicidal. The Korak had vowed that anyone aiding their prey would share their fate. As the voices rose, Talon lifted his hand for silence. When quiet fell, he spoke again, lower this time. "There is one possibility we have not discussed," he said. "The humans." The reaction was immediate. Gasps, murmurs, even laughter, though without amusement. "The humans?" Golar asked. "You mean the primitives from that Deathworld? The ones who have barely left their own star system?" Talon inclined his head. "The same. Earth appears in our records as uninhabitable. Its gravity is crushing, its atmosphere toxic to most, its weather violent beyond anything we know. Yet somehow intelligent life arose there. Life that survived and flourished under conditions that would kill most of us within minutes." Representative Vex from the Outer Rim colonies leaned forward. "I have heard tales of them. My traders sometimes cross paths with their vessels on the edge of known space. They say humans are different, dangerous in ways we do not yet understand." "Dangerous in what way?" asked the core world's representative. Vex hesitated, as if weighing each word. "Their ships are built like weapons, even those intended for trade. Their crews drill for combat constantly. And they have a saying, peace through superior firepower. It means they maintain peace by being more dangerous than anyone who might challenge them." The chamber burst into debate once again. Some dismissed the idea as madness. Others argued that desperate times demanded desperate measures. A few questioned whether the humans would even answer a plea from strangers they had never met. Talon waited until quiet returned. "I have studied their history," he said. "Humans have a pattern. When faced with bullies who prey on the weak, they do not yield. They fight. And they do not stop until the bully can never harm anyone again." "But what if they refuse?" another delegate asked. "What if they decide this is not their concern?" "Then we are no worse off than now," Talon answered. "My people will perish either way. But if there is even the slightest chance they will help, we must try." The vote was narrow, but it passed. The Council would send a message to Earth, pleading for aid against the Korak Empire. Many departed the chamber shaking their heads, convinced precious time was being wasted on a hopeless gamble. Across the galaxy, in the remote reaches of a spiral arm, Captain Reed sat in the command chair of the human vessel Prometheus. The ship was on patrol, monitoring the borders of human space for trouble. It was routine duty, but Reed never allowed his crew to grow complacent. Trouble, in his experience, had a habit of arriving uninvited. "Captain," called Lieutenant Johnson from communications, "I'm picking up a signal on the emergency channel. Not from any human ship." Reed frowned. The emergency channel was reserved for the gravest crises. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was alien, speaking broken yet clear English, recounting a tale of genocide and desperation. An entire civilization faced extinction under a brutal empire's assault. They had no one else to turn to. "How far to the Volani system?" Reed asked. 6 days at maximum jump, sir," replied the navigator. Reed rose and approached the main display. The star map highlighted the Volani system in red, surrounded by dozens of other worlds marked with skulls. Planets the Korak had already annihilated. "Sir?" Johnson asked. "Orders?" Reed studied the display for a long moment. He thought of Earth Command's directive to patrol the border and avoid hostile alien contact. He thought of the Prometheus, one ship against an empire. He thought of his crew, each with families, waiting back home. And then he thought of an entire peaceful people, about to be erased by bullies who believed themselves unstoppable. "Set course for the system," Reed ordered. "Maximum, sir?" the tactical officer asked cautiously. "Shouldn't we contact Earth Command first, for permission or reinforcements?" Reed turned to face his crew. Every one of them was watching, awaiting his decision. They were good people, trained soldiers, sworn to defend innocent life wherever it was found. "We'll send a message to command on the way," Reed said. "But we're not waiting for orders." Reed's voice was firm. "That message said those people have days before. They're all dead. If we wait for the bureaucrats to decide, we'll arrive just in time to count the bodies." The bridge crew exchanged glances. They all understood this could be a suicide mission. One human vessel against an entire alien empire was never good odds. But they also knew their captain was right. Someone had called for help, and humans answered such calls. It was simply what they did. "Course laid in, Captain," reported the navigator. "Jump when ready," Reed ordered. The Prometheus vanished into hyperspace, racing toward a distant star where an ancient evil was about to learn what happened when humans decided. Someone needed to be stopped. They emerged at the system's edge, sensors immediately sweeping for threats. Reed stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the tactical display as red icons bloomed across it. Each symbol marked a Korak warship, and there were far more than earlier intelligence had suggested. "Count them," Reed said quietly. "Lieutenant." Johnson worked his console, his expression paling as the numbers climbed. "Sir, over 300 vessels. The largest are bigger than anything in our database." Reed nodded grimly. The Korak had committed their full battle fleet to annihilate the Vani. This was more than invasion. It was a message to the galaxy. Resistance was futile. "Launch the stealth probes," Reed ordered. "I want full data, armament, shielding, weaknesses, everything." 3 small, near-invisible drones slipped from the Prometheus, gliding toward the enemy armada. Each carried the most advanced scanners humanity had developed, using gravitational distortions to hide their approach. While the probes advanced, Reed contacted Earth Command. Admiral Brooks herself appeared, her face a mask of concern and resolve. "Captain." "Reed," she began, "I've read your preliminary report. 300 enemy ships is beyond anything we've faced. What's the ground situation?" Reed brought up sensor readouts. It's grim, Admiral. The Korak have surrounded 4 worlds. They're not firing yet, but their terms are clear: complete surrender or total destruction. And the evacuation? They're trying, but they lack the ships. Maybe 10% can escape before the deadline. Brooks was silent for a moment, clearly calculating risks against potential outcomes. Finally, she spoke. We're sending reinforcements. Every available vessel. But it will take time. How much? 48 hours minimum, 72 at worst. Reed glanced at the display. The Korak deadline was in 36 hours. Even if every human ship arrived, it wouldn't be soon enough. Understood, Admiral. We'll hold as long as we can. The first probe slipped into the Korak formation, beginning its deep scan. The incoming data was both fascinating and chilling. These warships were crafted for one function: overwhelming destruction. Their hulls were thick with armor, their weaponry capable of punching through any known shields, and worst of all, they carried immense troop bays. Filled with soldiers, Commander Stone, the ship's intelligence officer, studied the data with mounting concern. Captain, these aren't just warships. They're invasion platforms. Each of those massive vessels carries enough troops to conquer an entire planet. How many troops? Reed asked. Stone ran the numbers. Based on ship sizes and visible internal structure, maybe 2 million soldiers, all heavily armed and equipped for planetary assault. Reed whistled softly. The entire human military had fewer than 5 million active soldiers across all branches. The Korak had brought nearly half that number just to crush one peaceful system. The second probe approached one of the giant Korak dreadnoughts. What it found chilled Reed to the bone. The ship's hull was adorned with symbols and trophies from conquered worlds. Entire sections of alien architecture had been welded on like trophies, scalps taken from defeated enemies. "Sir," Johnson called from his station, "I'm picking up transmissions from the Korak fleet. The universal translator struggles with their language, but I can make out the basics. Should I put it on speakers?" Reed nodded. The bridge filled with harsh, guttural noises, more animal growls than speech. Slowly, the translator decoded the message. Victory through strength. Strength through conquest. The weak exist to serve the strong. Those who resist are destroyed. Those who submit become slaves. This is the way of the Korak. The message repeated endlessly, broadcast on all frequencies. It was meant to demoralize. Anyone listening? Making resistance seem futile before a battle began. But Reed noticed something else. The Korak were not just threatening. They were trying to convince themselves. The repeated propaganda suggested they needed to believe their own words. The third probe finished scanning the Korak command structure. The enemy fleet was organized in a rigid hierarchy, with the largest ships at the center, surrounded by layers of smaller vessels. There was no flexibility, no room for clever tactics. They relied on brute force and intimidation. Commander Stone shared his insight with Reed. "Captain, I think I understand how the Korak operate. They've never faced serious resistance. Every species they've conquered either surrendered immediately or was crushed so fast they never learned to adapt. What does that mean for us? It means they have no experience fighting an enemy that actually resists. Their tactics are built to overwhelm weak foes, not to face a real military threat." Reed studied the tactical display again, seeing the Korak formation in a new light. Their ships were powerful, but their arrangement assumed no enemy would dare attack directly. The smaller vessels on the outside were spread too thin for mutual defense. The big ships at the center were too far back to respond quickly. It was like they were daring someone to attack. "Sir," Johnson said, "look at their formation. They're not protecting themselves. They're trying to look as intimidating as possible. It's psychological warfare, not real strategy." The more Reed examined the enemy, the clearer it became that the Korak Empire was built on a lie. They weren't unbeatable warriors. They were bullies who'd never met an opponent willing to fight back. A new message arrived from the Volani government. Ambassador Talon appeared on screen, his face worn with fear and exhaustion. "Captain Reed," he said, "the Korak have issued their final ultimatum. We have 18 hours to surrender, or they will begin destroying our worlds one by one. Our people are panicking. Many want to surrender just to survive a little longer." "Hold on, Ambassador," Reed replied. "Help is coming. But you're only one ship. How can you stand against their entire fleet?" Reed looked at his crew, seeing the fierce determination on their faces. These were humans raised on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned to survive by being smarter, tougher, and more stubborn than anything threatening them. "We'll find a way," Reed said simply. "Humans always do." After the communication ended, Reed gathered his senior officers in the small conference room beside the bridge. Their faces were serious as they reviewed the intelligence collected by the probes. "Gentlemen," Reed began, "we're outnumbered 300 to 1. The enemy has superior firepower and armor. By any reasonable measure, this is hopeless." He paused, letting the weight settle. "Fortunately, humans have never been particularly reasonable. We're going to hit them, and hit them hard. But we need to be smart about it." The planning session lasted for hours, each officer contributing ideas and expertise. When they finished, they had a plan equal parts brilliant and insane, relying on speed, surprise, and the unpredictable nature of humans. As the meeting broke, Reed stayed behind, staring at the tactical display. In a few hours, his ship would face an entire enemy fleet. The odds were terrible, but Reed found himself smiling. The Korak were about to learn what happened when bullies picked on someone who could fight back. The Korak ultimatum expired at dawn on the first world. Admiral Kresh stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the peaceful planet below. It had neither surrendered nor resisted. It simply waited, hoping for a miracle that would never come. "Begin the bombardment," Kresh ordered. "Destroy their capital city first. Let them see what happens to those who defy the Korak Empire." The dreadnought's massive guns began charging, energy signatures building to devastating levels. Across the fleet, other ships readied their weapons. In minutes, millions of innocent lives would be extinguished as a grim warning to the galaxy. That's when the Prometheus appeared. The human ship dropped out of hyperspace directly between the Korak fleet and the planet below. It was tiny compared to the alien warships, no bigger than one of their escorts, but its sudden arrival made the Korak hesitate. "Unknown vessel," Admiral Kresh broadcast. "You are interfering with Korak military operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Captain Reed's response was broadcast on all frequencies, every ship in the system hearing it clearly. "This is Captain Reed of the human vessel, Prometheus. The Vani people are under our protection. Any attack on them will be considered an act of war against humanity. You have 60 seconds to withdraw your forces." The Korak bridge crew exchanged confused glances. A single alien ship was threatening their entire fleet. It was either the bravest act they had ever witnessed, or the most foolish. Admiral Kresh laughed, a harsh sound echoing through his ship. "Humans, I have heard of your species. You think you are warriors because you survived on a harsh world. Let me show you what real warriors can do." He turned to his weapons officer. "Destroy that ship. Use it as target practice." 12 Korak destroyers moved into position. The Korak fleet charged forward, their guns powering up. The human ship made no attempt to flee. Instead, it did something that made no sense at all. It accelerated straight into the Korak formation, as if it planned to ram them. "Foolish aliens," Kresh muttered. "They choose suicide over surrender." But the Prometheus had no intention to ram anyone. Reaching the formation's edge, it suddenly changed course and darted beneath the belly of the nearest destroyer. The Korak ship tried to track it with its weapons, but the human vessel was too close and moving too fast. Reed's voice crackled over communications again. "You should have accepted our offer. The Prometheus fired its guns point-blank into the destroyer's engine section. The Korak shields, designed to block long-range attacks, were useless at such close range. The human ship's weapons tore through the hull like paper. The destroyer exploded in a blinding flash. Before the Korak could react, the Prometheus was already moving on to its next target. It weaved between larger ships, using them as cover while it struck at their smaller escorts. The human ship fought like nothing the Korak had ever witnessed. It was fast, unpredictable, and utterly fearless. "All ships, open fire, Admiral!" Kresh shouted. "Destroy that ship!" The Korak fleet turned every weapon toward the lone human vessel, filling space with beams and projectiles. But the Prometheus seemed to dance through the barrage, never lingering long enough to be hit. It moved like a fighter pilot in a dogfight, not a starship captain in a fleet battle. Captain Reed stood calmly on the bridge, issuing orders as his ship twisted and spun through enemy lines. "Johnson, target their command antennas. Stone, prepare. The boarding pods. We're taking one of their big ships." "Pods?" Stone replied. "We only have 30 Marines aboard." 30 human Marines, Reed corrected. "Against aliens who've never faced real soldiers, that's enough." The Prometheus aligned with a Korak cruiser and fired 3 boarding pods from its launch tubes. The small craft were designed to pierce enemy hulls and deliver troops directly inside hostile ships. The Korak had no defense against such a tactic. No civilized species had ever been reckless enough to try it. The pods struck the cruiser, burning through its armor. 30 human Marines, led by Sergeant Miller, poured into the alien ship. They wore powered armor that made them look like metal demons and carried weapons that could punch through bulkheads. The Korak crew had never fought inside their own ships before. Their weapons were built for planetary combat, not the cramped corridors of starships. Humans, however, had trained specifically for this kind of fighting. "Move fast, hit hard," Miller ordered his troops. "Find their bridge and take control." The Marines spread through the cruiser like a virus, fighting, past confused and panicked alien soldiers. The Korak were fierce, but had never faced enemies with such intensity and skill. Other Korak ships hesitated, unsure whether to fire on their own vessel. That moment of confusion was all Reed needed. The Prometheus appeared from behind a Korak dreadnought, its guns blazing. Somehow, it had slipped behind the enemy flagship, undetected. Reed's ship poured fire into the massive vessel's engine section, crippling it and leaving it drifting helplessly. Admiral Kresh watched in horror as his perfect formation unraveled. The human ship was everywhere at once, striking and vanishing before his gunners could respond. His own cruiser fired on his fleet. His flagship was disabled and burning. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "It's only one ship," his tactical officer, a scarred veteran of dozens of campaigns, replied fearfully. "Admiral, these humans fight like demons. They ignore all known warfare patterns. They attack when they should retreat, board ships instead of destroying them, then use our own weapons against us." Kresh roared. "All ships, concentrate fire on that human vessel. I want it blown to pieces." But Reed had anticipated this. As the Korak fleet focused on the Prometheus, 3 more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. They were destroyers. From the Earth Patrol fleet, smaller and faster but just as deadly, Captain Nash of the destroyer Revenge led the newcomers in a coordinated strike on the Korak rear guard. His ships moved in perfect formation, picking off enemies with surgical precision. The Korak were caught between 2 forces. The Prometheus danced through their formation, while the new human ships attacked from the rear. Every move was anticipated and countered. "Sir," the Korak tactical officer reported, "we've lost 47 ships. The humans have lost none." Admiral Kresh stared in disbelief. His mighty fleet, the terror of the galaxy, was being shredded by 4 human ships. It was impossible, yet unfolding before his eyes. "Withdraw," he ordered quietly. "Sir, withdraw!" Kresh shouted. "All ships retreat to hyperspace. We will regroup and call reinforcements." But the humans were not finished. As the Korak fled, the captured cruiser opened fire from behind. The human Marines had turned the alien vessel against its own fleet. The retreat became a rout. Ship after ship was destroyed, trying to reach hyperspace. Those who escaped carried news that shook the Korak Empire to its core. Humans had arrived, and they fought like nothing seen before. News of the defeat at the Volani system spread like wildfire. For the first time in history, a Korak fleet was forced to retreat, not by a superior force, but by 4 alien ships using tactics no civilized species had ever employed. Emperor Vra sat on his throne in the capital city of the Korak homeworld. Military commanders filled the Great Hall, struggling to comprehend the disaster. You lost 60 ships to 4 human vessels? Emperor Vra's voice was dangerously quiet. Explain. Admiral Kresh knelt before the throne, his armor still, scorched. My lord, these humans fight unlike any enemy we've faced. They use their ships as weapons, ramming us, exploding inside our formations. They board our ships instead of fighting from a distance. They turn our own guns against us. Coward, spat General Thos beside the throne. You were defeated by primitives and now make excuses? Then face them, Kresh replied angrily. Take your armies and show us how it's done. Emperor Vra raised his hand for silence. Enough. We will not be defeated by a handful of ships from an unknown world. Mobilize the Second Fleet. Bring 10,000 vessels to crush these humans and their pets. But the humans were no longer just defending the system. While the Korak argued human ships had pursued the retreating Korak back into their territory, what began as a rescue mission was now turning into something much larger. Captain Reed stood in the war room aboard the Earth Fleet carrier New York, which had arrived with massive reinforcements. Admiral Brooks had brought everything Earth could spare: battleships, carriers, destroyers, and support vessels. The human fleet now numbered over 200 ships. The Korak have military bases in 17 systems, Admiral Brooks explained, pointing at the star map. Each base supports their expansion into new territory. If we destroy these bases, we can cut their supply lines and stop their ability to wage war. General Hayes, commander of the Marine Corps Expeditionary Force, studied the tactical data. These bases are heavily defended. Some have ground-based weapons capable of destroying our ships in orbit. Then we don't fight them in orbit, Admiral Brooks replied. We go to the surface and destroy them the hard way. The first target was a Korak shipyard in the Korvac system. The facility was massive, capable of building 50 warships at once. It was protected by orbital defense platforms and a garrison of 100,000 Korak soldiers. Major Cross led the assault team, tasked with capturing the shipyard. His Special Forces unit had trained for missions like this, but never against an enemy that outnumbered them so heavily. Remember, Cross told his soldiers as they prepared to board their dropships, we are not here to fight fair. We are here to win. Use every advantage we have. The attack began with Captain Wells and his destroyer squadron eliminating the orbital defenses. The human ships moved too fast for Korash gunners to track, striking each platform with precision before moving on. With the orbital defenses down, Major Cross led his Marines to the surface. The Korak had built their base in a mountain valley, thinking the terrain would protect them. They hadn't considered that humans were experts in mountain warfare. The Marines landed on peaks surrounding the valley and began descending in small teams, using rocky terrain to hide their approach. Each team carried enough firepower to destroy a city block, concentrated into weapons portable by individual soldiers. The Korak guards never saw them coming. The first sign of attack was explosions tearing through defensive positions. The humans struck from multiple directions at once, using tactics alien defenders couldn't understand. They are everywhere, a Korak commander reported to headquarters. How can so few soldiers be in so many places at once? The answer was simple. Human soldiers were trained to fight as individuals, not just in formations. Each Marine could operate independently, adapting to changing situations without waiting for orders. While the Marines captured ground installations, Demolition teams placed charges throughout the shipyard. Within 6 hours, the entire facility was under human control. Major Cross stood in the command center, watching as his team systematically destroyed every piece of equipment that could build Korak warships. "Target destroyed," he reported to Admiral Brooks, moving to next objective. This pattern repeated across Korak space. Human forces struck military bases, supply depots, and communication centers. Each attack was ruthlessly efficient. The humans didn't just defeat their enemies. They eliminated their ability to keep fighting. Emperor Vra watched his empire crumble on the strategic displays in his throne room. Red lights marked destroyed or captured bases. Communication lines showed gaps where humans severed connections between Korak worlds. "How many ships do these humans have?" he demanded. "Our intelligence suggests no more than 500. "Vessels," replied his chief advisor. "But they fight as if they have thousands. They strike multiple targets simultaneously and vanish before we can respond. Then we will make them come to us," Emperor Vra decided. "Recall all fleets to the homeworld. Let them try to attack our strongest fortification." But the humans had no intention of attacking the Korak homeworld directly. Instead, they continued their systematic destruction of the Empire's infrastructure. Admiral Brooks studied reports of Korak expansion and identified their weakness. They depended on a complex network of supply lines to maintain their military machine. "Cut. The arteries and the body dies," she explained to her staff. "We don't need to destroy every Korak ship. We just need to make it impossible for them to fuel, supply, or repair those ships." Captain Nash led a squadron of destroyers in an attack on the main Korak fuel depot in the Zerion system. The facility processed fuel for half the Korak fleet, converting raw materials into the exotic matter their ships used for power. The attack was swift and devastating. Nash's ships appeared from hyperspace firing their weapons, targeting the refinery's most volatile parts. The explosions that followed could be seen from orbit, and the facility burned for days. Similar attacks struck mining operations. Weapons factories and training centers fell next. Each successful mission weakened the Korak Empire's ability to continue the war. More importantly, it sent a message to every Korak commander. Nowhere was safe from human attack. The psychological impact exceeded even the military damage. Korak soldiers who had never known defeat began to fear their human enemies. Stories spread through their ranks, Marines who fought like demons, ships that appeared from nowhere to strike and vanish, enemies who never gave up and showed no mercy. Entire Korak fleets began surrendering rather than face human forces in battle. Planets loyal to the Empire for generations declared independence. The Korak Empire, built on fear and intimidation, was collapsing as its enemies realized. They were not invincible. In his throne room, Emperor Vra stared at displays showing the remains of his once mighty empire. Half his territory was in open rebellion. His fleets were scattered or destroyed. His military commanders were either dead or in hiding. "Bring me the human leader," he ordered his remaining advisors. "I will negotiate terms." But the humans were not interested in negotiation. They had seen what the Korak Empire did to peaceful worlds. They had witnessed genocide, slavery, and the casual cruelty that defined Korak civilization. There would be no negotiation. There would only be justice. 3 months after the first battle at the Volani system, Emperor Vra knelt in the ruins of his throne room. The great palace that had stood for 1,000 years was now a shattered monument to fallen pride. Human. Marines stood guard at every entrance, weapons ready but unnecessary. The Korak ruler had no fight left in him. Admiral Brooks walked through the debris, her boots crunching on broken stone and twisted metal. She stopped in front of the former emperor, looking down at the being who once commanded the galaxy's most feared military force. "Your empire is finished," she said simply. "Your fleets are destroyed or surrendered. Your worlds are in rebellion. Your people demand new leadership." Vra raised his head slowly. His once proud armor was dented and scarred. The crown marking his absolute authority lay broken at his feet. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Justice," Brooks replied. "For every world you destroyed, every innocent life you took, every species you drove to extinction." Across the galaxy, the collapse of the Korak Empire sent shockwaves through every civilization. Species that had lived in terror for generations suddenly found themselves free. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions to address the aftermath, but struggled to comprehend what had happened. Ambassador Talon stood before the Council once more, but this time his message was very different. The Vanni diplomat looked healthier, his people saved from certain destruction. Behind him, holographic displays showed the current state of former Korak territory. "The humans have done something unprecedented," Talon reported. "They have not conquered the Korak Empire. They have dismantled it completely. Every military installation has been destroyed or captured. Every warship has been eliminated. The infrastructure that supported their war machine no longer exists." Representative Golar from the Helix Confederation leaned forward in his floating seat. "What about the Korak population? Surely the humans are not committing genocide in return." "No," Talon replied. "The humans have been careful to distinguish between the Korak military and their civilian population. Soldiers who surrendered have been taken prisoner. Civilians have been left alone unless they actively supported military operations." "But what about their leadership?" asked the representative from the core worlds. "The war criminals are being held for trial," Talon answered. "The humans insist that those responsible for genocide must face justice. They have compiled evidence from hundreds of destroyed worlds." The council chamber buzzed with nervous conversation. Never before had an entire galactic empire been brought down so completely by such a small force. The implications were staggering. On the Korak homeworld, Captain Reed walked through the capital city with a squad of Marines. The streets were quiet, filled with alien civilians watching the humans with a mix of fear and curiosity. Most had never seen their conquerors up close before. The Korak people were not inherently evil, Reed had learned. They were a warrior culture, shaped by centuries of military rule. Their leaders had convinced them that conquest was necessary for survival, that the strong had the right to dominate the weak. "Sir," Sergeant Miller reported, "the civilian government representatives are ready to meet with you." Reed nodded. The humans had insisted the Korak people choose new leaders from among their own civilians, not the military. It was a difficult process, but necessary for lasting peace. The meeting took place in what had once been the Emperor's private council chamber. A dozen Korak civilians sat around a circular table, their faces showing equal parts uncertainty and hope. These were teachers, doctors, engineers, and administrators who had never held political power. "We do not know how to govern," one admitted. "For 1,000 years, the military made all decisions. We have no experience with democracy or civilian rule." "You will learn," Reed assured them. "Other species have transitioned from military dictatorship to peaceful government. The galaxy will help you if you commit to changing your ways." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Admiral Brooks. Reed stepped outside to take the call, leaving the Korak civilians to discuss their future among themselves. "Captain," Brooks said, "we have a problem. 3 Korak battle groups operating in deep space have refused to surrender. They're heading toward the Nexus colonies, threatening to continue the war." Reed frowned. The Nexus colonies were exactly the kind of peaceful settlements the Korak had always targeted. If the rogue fleets reached them, millions of innocent people would die. "How long do we have?" 48 hours. Maybe less. These are hardline commanders who refuse to accept defeat. They would rather burn the galaxy than admit they were wrong. Reed looked back at the council chamber where the Korak civilians were trying to build a better future, then thought about the innocent colonists who were about to become victims of the war criminal's last desperate act. "Send me the fleet positions," he ordered. "We finish this now." The final battle of the war took place in the empty space between star systems. The three rogue Korak fleets had linked up, creating a combined force of nearly 400 ships. It was the largest enemy formation the humans had faced since the war began. Captain Nash led the human interceptor force, racing to reach the colonies before the Korak could attack. His ships pushed their engines beyond safe limits, determined to arrive in time. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "the enemy fleet is moving faster than expected. They will reach the colony 6 hours before we do." Nash studied the tactical display, calculating distances and speeds. There was only one way to stop the Korak in "All ships," Captain Nash broadcast to his squadron. "Prepare for emergency hyperspace insertion. We are dropping out of hyperspace directly inside their formation." The bridge crew exchanged tense glances. Dropping out of hyperspace inside an enemy fleet was incredibly dangerous. The gravitational fields of so many ships could tear apart anything that materialized among them. "Sir," the navigation officer said cautiously, "the odds of survival are less than 30%? Then we better make those 30% count," Nash replied. 20 human ships materialized at the center of the Korak formation, their weapons already firing. The surprise was total. The enemy had no time to react as human guns tore into their ships at point-blank range. The battle was fierce but brief. The humans fought with the desperation of those who knew they were likely to die, but were determined to save the innocent colonists. Ship after ship was destroyed on both sides until space was littered with debris and burning wreckage. When the fighting ended, only 7 human ships remained functional, but the Korak fleet was completely destroyed. The last military force of the Empire had been eliminated, along with their threat to peaceful worlds. In the aftermath, the galaxy began to slowly rebuild. The Korak homeworld established a civilian government with the help of the Galactic Council. Former Korak territories were freed to govern themselves or join other confederations. War crimes trials were held for those responsible for genocide. Ambassador Talon made one final report to the Galactic Council, summarizing the end of the Korak threat. "The humans have returned to their own space," he concluded. "They asked for no territory, no tribute, no special recognition. They came when we called for help. They ended a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, and then they went home." "What kind of species does such a thing?" Representative Vex asked. Talon considered the question carefully before answering. "The kind that understands sometimes the greatest mercy requires absolute strength. The kind that will cross the galaxy to protect strangers, then disappear without asking for reward. The kind that proves the most dangerous worlds sometimes produce the most noble hearts." The Galactic Council voted unanimously to establish a memorial for all those who had died under Korak rule. At its center was a simple inscription: "When evil seemed unstoppable, someone answered the call for help." In the outer reaches of the galaxy, human ships resumed their quiet patrols, watching for new threats and hoping they would never again be needed. But if another call for help came from desperate people facing extinction, the humans would answer. They always did.